Leading up to Game 4, we found out that the Celtics were going to be without two starters, Kemba Walker and Robert Williams. That's on top of them already being without Jaylen Brown. So we knew Game 4 was going to be a really difficult task, and that's exactly what it proved to be. Celtics now down 3-1 in the series to the Brooklyn Nets following a 141-126 loss at TD Garden in Boston to the Brooklyn Nets. The big three for Brooklyn, they went off. They had themselves a Sunday. 42 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists for Kevin Durant. James Harden, 23 points and 18 assists, just flat out ridiculous. And Kyrie Irving gave it to the Celtics, 39 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 dimes. For the Celtics, Jayson Tatum, 40 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists. Marcus Smart, 16 points, 9 assists, and 6 rebounds. Evan Fournier, not the most efficient day, but he did chime in with 16 points. So Celtics, Brad Stevens, Jayson Tatum, they were really faced with a difficult task and proposition, having to play without Kemba Walker and Robert Williams. And I mentioned this is on top of them already being without Jaylen Brown. And when you're down 3 starters against a Brooklyn Nets team that can light it up in a hurry, that's why you saw this game just get out of hand after that first quarter. This is what the Celtics did with that starting lineup. Brad Stevens going with Romeo Langford, so he got some pivotal playoff experience. Marcus Smart got the start as well. Then it went Evan Fournier at the kind of guard forward spot, Jayson Tatum at small forward, his normal position, and Tristan Thompson once again was very active. He manned the center spot against a Nets team that also goes pretty small at the 5 spot as well. So Celtics fans, grade that Celtics lineup for me, the starting lineup, not considering how they were or the talent on it, just how they played given the circumstances, with Brad Stevens basically having to put together that starting lineup right before tip. A, B, C, D, or F. Get your votes in the comment section below. Jayson Tatum dropped a 50-piece burger during Game 3, according to Kendrick Perkins. And look, you can't ask him to drop 50 points game in and game out. It's just impossible to do so. He was brilliant again, especially to start this game. Got the crowd fired up at TD Garden. Finished with 40 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists on 10 of 22 shooting. But this Celtics offense just could not keep up with the Brooklyn Nets. It went back and forth for that first quarter, but after that, the Nets were in fuego, led by Kevin Durant. 42-piece, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, the most efficient scorer of all time, showing why he is in fact the most efficient scorer of all time. He went 14 of 20 from the floor. And Kyrie Irving went to TD Garden in Boston. He was booed heavily during Game 3, booed heavily during Game 4. That's understandable. Kyrie doesn't like Boston. Boston doesn't like Kyrie. That marriage ended in a divorce very quickly, and it was somewhat of a short-term partnership, and Kyrie has kind of bashed Boston since he went to the Brooklyn Nets, but he silenced that crowd with 39 points, 11 rebounds, only 2 assists. He's never been a big assist guy, but 11 of 24 from the field. And he was kind of making it rain from beyond the arc, so Kyrie Irving probably feels good going back to Brooklyn that he was able to shush some Celtics fans up, because they were certainly booing him very heavily. Game 4 takeaways for me. In that first quarter, I thought the Boston fans brought a different level of energy and somewhat affected the game in the early going. Nets were a little slow to get started. They were out of rhythm. I think that was a big part caused by the fan base at TD Garden, and you're seeing when you watch games or you're in person at games how much of a difference a crowd can make. That Boston crowd, even though they were down 3 starters, they were certainly bringing the heat. Celtics also switched a lot on defense, which at times in the early portion of this game worked out. I don't know if Brad Stevens is going to continue to do that, because it's really hard to switch against Kyrie, Kevin Durant, and James Harden. Maybe that's a defensive switch that they make going into Game 5 to try and avoid elimination. Because of all those switches and because the Celtics had to often go small, Kevin Durant played some small ball 5, which was a weird lineup for the Nets, and what it did was basically Steve Nash was able to trot out a bunch of shooters. It spread the floor a little bit, and Boston went with Grant Williams at the 5. A little bit of a mismatch there because KD, in those short sample sizes, was able to kind of float out to the perimeter a little bit. But at the end of the day, my biggest takeaway during Game 4 is just a lack of firepower for the Celtics. without Kemba, who, yeah, he hasn't been right this year because of that lingering knee issue. Robert Williams was probably the Celtics' best player in Game 1. What do you have, 9 blocks? So you're without those two guys. You already knew you're without Jaylen Brown, and you're still trying to keep up with the big three that might be the most elite and just ridiculous scoring trio in the history of the NBA. Very, very tall task, and Sunday proved to be that case. So when we look ahead to Game 5, Celtics going to look to avoid elimination Tuesday night at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Tip-off set for 7:30 Eastern. Nets, of course, with this dominant Game 4 victory, up 3-1 in this series. So who you got? Do you have faith if you're a Celtics fan? Can they extend this series? Maybe Jayson Tatum goes off for another 50-piece again. If you think that happens, type BOS for the Boston Celtics. If you think the Nets are just going to continue to roll, get into the comments, predict it for me, and type BKN if you have Brooklyn. We're going to continue to cover the Celtics all throughout the playoffs as long as they are alive, even leading up to and after Game 5, but also throughout this very pivotal NBA offseason for the Celtics that could see a lot of changes. So for Celtics fans watching right now, you're not subscribed, you should subscribe right now because we're talking about the best Celtics coverage here on YouTube. Hit that big red button down below that says subscribe or go to youtube.com/CelticsTV. Let's preview Game 5 at the Barclays Center between the Brooklyn Nets and the Boston Celtics. Nets up 3-1, a commanding lead in this series after a dominant Game 4 performance where we saw Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden just go off. Let's recap this series real quick. Game 1, until maybe the midway point of the fourth quarter, was somewhat close, but the Nets able to kind of outlast Boston in Game 1, winning it 104-93. Kevin Durant was really good and really efficient in that game with 32 points. As for Game 2, Celtics got the doors blown off. Joe Harris had a just spectacular first quarter, and he was just making it rain from all across the floor. He finished with 25 points in the first half, 25 points in the game. Nets won that one 130-108. Game 3, the big highlight for Celtics fans so far, when Jayson Tatum put together the best postseason performance of his young career. He went off, 50-piece burger, nuggets, biscuits, gravy, little Cajun seasoning on there as well. Jayson Tatum looked like one of the best players in the NBA, and that's why a lot of people believe he is one of the best players in the NBA. He was virtually unstoppable, even though KD and James Harden scored 39 and 41 points respectively. Celtics able to outlast the Nets in that game, 125-119, and then we bring it to present day. Game 4, Nets win at 141-126 behind a monster performance from KD, Harden, Kyrie, really the consistent theme of this series and what you expect to be the consistent theme throughout the postseason, because the big question with Brooklyn heading into the playoffs, they had played 8 games together as a trio. Were they going to be able to put it together and be consistent without much continuity in the regular season in the playoffs? They've been able to do that so far. They haven't met a big defensive challenge yet because the Celtics are so depleted, but damn, Nets looking really good so far. So on Tuesday night, do you think the Celtics are going to be able to extend this series to a possible Game 6? It would then shift back to TD Garden in Boston. You know the fan base would be lit. If you think the Celtics can extend the series beyond 5 games, type Y for yes. If not, you think they're done, type N for no. Get your votes in the comments section and let me know. Keys for Game 5. Celtics have to be better on the road. In Games 1 and 2, they were not good on the road at the Barclays Center. And let's be honest, the Nets don't have much of a home court advantage, yet the Celtics haven't played well on the road against the Nets, so be better on the road if you're the Boston Celtics. Point number 2, do your thing, JT. I called him out after Game 2. He had to be more aggressive and more assertive. I think he watched Celtics Today by Chat Sports because he responded by scoring 50 points. And yes, he had that eye injury at the end of the game, but even before that in Game 2, he just wasn't putting in work like I'd seen him put in work. So Jayson Tatum coming off 2 back-to-back impressive performances. You got to put together another one. Unfortunately, that's the reality with the Celtics because they're without so much firepower. And for Brad Stevens and Jayson Tatum, It's their hope, it's Danny Ainge's hope, it's Celtics fans' hope that Kemba Walker and Robert Williams are going to be back on the floor. Kemba missed this game because of a lingering knee issue, Robert Williams because of a sprained ankle. Their status moving forward for Tuesday's game, unknown, but if they do come back, that'll help lift the Celtics up on both ends of the floor. So do you have faith in the Celtics? Be honest. Let me know how you're feeling, what you're thinking, and how you're doing over there. Type 1 for yes, I am positive and I have faith. Type 2 for no. Let me know how you're feeling in the comments section below.